that I would go to Heidelberg. For $75. I said, before I bought 2 gingerbread houses, I needed to check with you. And I'm sorry, ended up getting a kits at Harris Teeter.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
So
yeah.
I put together today. I had a little time to go over and I put them together. I thought they looked pretty good. And then I looked at them after I decorated them and they're definitely not
Andrew, can you hear us?
square.
Yes, you hear
All
me?
right, good. Yes, just want to make sure we're all good. All right, great.
Cool.
Thanks. All right. So,
Okay, all right, with that, call to order the December 2024 HLRB meeting.
Maura Davis,
Here.
there is excused. Robert Detka,
Here.
Andrew Fackler,
Here.
Foster, here. Carmela Ham. Okay. Jerry Laporte,
Here.
Joan Lawrence,
Here.
Katie Myers, are you here?
Here.
Right. Winchell,
Here.
Dick Woodruff.
Here.
Yep.
All right, great. Before we jump into, I guess, this I just wanted to give Robert a chance to introduce himself to the board. I think he knows everybody here.
Yes.
Just kind of.
Well, amazingly enough, I know almost everybody here. And I can't remember the last time I was here if I met you two, but everybody else I know, so. So I'm Robert Dudka. I've been on the board for a really long time. I've had some health issues, so hopefully I'll be back, but we'll see.
Good to
see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or meet you. Yeah.
And Andrew online is one of our newer HLRB members as well.
Okay.
So,
Robert, that will get the destination of the procedures here. So walking into the next meeting, so effective July 1, 2024, updated state legislation continues to require certain county appointed boards, commissions, and HLRB to have an in-person forum to conduct HLRB hearings and provide in a hybrid environment in person and streamed online from the public may attend, either virtually or in person. Members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please join via Microsoft Teams link. Please keep your device muted until you let to speak, but ensure your video is turned on. You are visible during the entire meeting. Members of the public joining us this evening, tonight's meeting is available to stream in the county via a Teams link. There's also a dial-in person, dial-in option to mute. Device muted and video turned off until you are called upon to speak. The speaker is not sponsoring items on the agenda. Registration online today's hearing. Speaker slips are available at the front of the room. So are none. I'll call you to speak after presentation. Being best active. Not being discussion, public comments, questions about the agenda items, or question more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assignment period. All will be done by call the roll. And lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to freedom of information requirements. And with that, we'll move on to the approval of the November. Are there any questions or concerns? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
I move we approve the November 2024 minutes.
Maura Davis,
Yes.
Robert Detka,
Abstain?
Andrew Fackler,
Abstain.
Alex Foster,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andrew Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes. Fantastic. Next, there's one administrative CO listed information. Get that in, I guess, as you will. And then next, adoption of the HLRB electronic meeting policy and update of the HLRB bylaws. these two items, I guess they were introduced, like one introduced last week and then one, I guess, you can invite to them. Very thoughts.
Absolutely. Okay, so first we're gonna go over the electronic meeting policy first. And have you all make a motion on that. So initially I had said that we would go over this policy at the start of the new year, but we decided to move it up to this month instead and have it coincide with the bylaw update because the bylaws reference this document. So I wanted to have it neat and tidy, just have it be done at the same time. So as you all recall from previous discussions, the new state law basically requires that any commission have its own electronic meeting policy document. Originally, this language had been located in the bylaws, had to take it out because they are requiring that we re-adopt a new policy every single year. So it's going to be easier for us if we just have a separate document that we can re-up every single year. This document is essentially the same policy that all other commissions have. It's language created by the county attorney's office. And for a while, we've been covered by the county board's policy, but we'll have this as our separate and just move forward with it. So are there any questions about the policy? I'm happy to go over it in more detail if there's specific questions about what it covers, but we have talked about it a couple times now, so I want to be cognizant of everyone's time.
You said this is the county attorney's office.
Yep.
Suggested language.
Exactly. It's very, oh, sorry, go
I
ahead.
have one question. It seems to me that the policy ought to reflect on its face that it's only effective for 1 year, but it doesn't do that. And at the end, maybe the resolution that we adopt should do that. But then if that's how I don't know how we're handling this. If it's only a 1 year policy, somewhere that should be reflected. Okay.
Is it a county policy that it's
I
only
think
good
it's
for a year?
I think it's a
State policy.
Yeah, I think it's a state policy. This is basically it reflects what the county board has. So
You could do it by, like at the bottom where you say adopted, you could have adopted December 18th, 2024 for a period ending on December 31st, 2025.
Okay.
And then reflect it in the resolution that we adopt.
okay,
Because otherwise, this could be floating around and it might be, how do you know it's invalid?
Sure.
Unless it's reflected on the face or someplace.
okay. Okay. Is everyone else comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can absolutely do that once I update it with the date.
One question I had about it was that, it's reflected somewhere else, but in terms of, I guess, point 2, if you're in a caretaking position, I guess, how many, can that run sort of like infinitely? Like, or how many days, or how many different weeks can you actually be in that mode? Is that reflected anywhere in the
I don't think that the state requires that there be a time limit on being a caregiver. So I don't think it's that there is like a specific time frame in which that would run out, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah, if it doesn't specifically state that, then there's no end. That would be the reasonable interpretation.
Any other questions?
that I'll make a motion on this and so I move that they shall be approved. That's right. That they shall be approved electronic meeting policy with the following changes. That the terms, rather that the time frame of the bylaw is stated. That the 1 year term of the bylaw is stated.
Okay. policy.
Policy
The
will be
electron-
effective until
the
December 31st, 2025.
Okay, so it would be the bylaw would be policy. And I think, and Jerry, you had suggested it'd be December 31st of 2025, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's arbitrary. That's, I think, if you're going to do it every year, then we just adopt it
Yeah,
every
it's
year.
effective the 1st of January, 2025.
You could say that too.
Just that,
I'm not troubled by it being effective today.
reflect, policy reflect
I don't think
timeframe.
anybody's going to sue us. Bring us to court. Days.
Well, especially if you think business we're doing is
That's right.
is this.
Okay, go ahead.
Motion is that the HALRB approve the electronic meeting policy with the following changes, that the policy reflect the timeframe ending on December 31st, 2025.
Jerry, did you second it? Please respond yes if you support the motion. Amari Davis,
Yes.
Robert Decker.
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Yes. Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
and Dick Woodruff.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Bylaws. Right, the moment everyone's been waiting for, get to vote on the bylaw. It's finally, we've been talking about it for a while. Okay, so I know that I've gone over these changes a couple times. If anyone had any specific questions last meeting, so I'm happy to talk about them again tonight or answer specific questions if anyone has anything that came up in the time since we last talked about it. If there are any questions, comments, general edits, have to flip through.
This is basically just to state that the electronic meeting policy is now a separate document.
In part, so the struck out version there is that,
Oh, and the meeting attendance also.
yeah, and the meeting attendance has been updated too. So there's the struck out portion is the new electronic meeting policy that you all just adopted. Then the section K basically directs everybody to where that policy is located, so that there's no confusion if people look at the bylaws. And I'll put the electronic meeting policy as an addendum to this, so it's all together. But the attendance updates are a change in language. So initially, the bylaws had said that any board member who missed more than 3 consecutive regular meetings or more than half the regular meetings in a calendar year, that language was really confusing for a lot of people. And so the change is basically that it would say anyone who misses more than 6 regular meetings in a calendar year and taking out that consecutive clause portion of it. So that's one change. The other one is an absence due to medical condition. The word used to be sickness, and we inserted medical condition to make it a little bit more broad, and sickness could be encapsulated in that. And then the other update is a change in understanding what a prolonged absence is, and adding some language about that, and then what the chair could do in terms of a prolonged absence due to a medical condition, death in the family, or other emergencies of a similar nature, because that wasn't addressed previously. So those are, in a nutshell, all the updates to the bylaws.
Can I just ask why the strikes aren't shown?
Why it's shown.
Why the strikes are not shown?
Oh, I only did it for the other section. I can pull up the other version if you would like to see it.
No, you just explained it. I was just wondering why.
Okay.
Since he wasn't there.
And then looking at this, I think there's confusion between two different actions. One is to declare the seat vacant and the other one is to appoint a replacement. And I think what we're talking about here is only declaring the seat vacant. Okay, but I guess it's in the middle paragraph there, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth line down. You say, in the absence of an adequate showing, the chair shall notify the county board and request replacement with a new appointment. I don't think that's what you want to say. I think you want to say notify the county board and request that the board declare the seat vacant. That's all. You don't need to have a replacement in place at the same time. You just declare the seat vacant, and then if they want to appoint somebody, they can, but they don't have to. You don't have to have somebody waiting in the wings to take that seat. We've had vacant seats for years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I would say I'll replace it with a new appointment and say that the board declare the seat vacant. I think that's consistent with the other one.
I move that HLRB approve the update of HLRB bylaws with the following changes. That the fifth one, we just want to call out what we're striking and that so with the striking of the phrase, so the following changes: delete the phrase request replacement with new appointment, and replace request to designate the seat vacant.
I think the previous language declare the seat vacant.
Yes.
That the HALRB approve the update to the HALRB bylaws with the following changes. Delete the phrase request new appointment, unquote, and replace with, quote, declare the seat vacant.
I think it's request that the board declares vacant. I don't think you need to strike request. I think you can keep that in. I don't care how you do it. But its replacement with a new appointment is deleted, and that the board declare the seat vacant is inserted there.
Second.
Second.
Okay, you said it first. Sorry, Jen.
Did you say?
All right, please respond yes if you support the motion. Omari Davis,
Yeah.
Robert Duncan,
Yes.
Andrew Thackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster,
Yes.
Jerry Laporte,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes. Good work.
Thank you. I will update them all and send them out so you have a copy, and then I will put them on the website as well. Yep. Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah, it was really fun to work.
Exciting project.
Pleasure job first.
Thank you all.
With that, next is the chair's report and leadership, and I think this is probably a good time for me to announce that I'm not running for chair again. So stepping aside, passing the torch to new leadership. And just want to thank everybody here for your participation and support over the past 2 years. Been a pleasure, and I'm humbled to have served alongside you, and I just want to say that. Thanks, everybody. And I'm thanking the board after stepping out of leadership. So see me also be on the ERC as well. So hanging around, just passing the torch as previous edition.
We wanted to thank you, Omari, for all of your leadership and your advocacy, not only for preservation in the county, but also for the ground. And we know you've worked really hard, so we really appreciate it. We're very happy you're still sitting.
I guess with that, I'll turn over to Joan and Jerry regarding slate for tonight's leadership elections.
So the slate for tonight, and thank you, Omari, for everything you've done too. And we're also making a few inquiries for this process, so that was helpful. We're proposing Katie Myers for chair and Alex Foster for vice chair. You've got the motion, right?
Yes, if there's any discussion.
Oh, is there?
I guess I need to, the motion,
Well,
yeah, the motion
well, Omari's still
is,
chair. I mean, if ask for
that-
any other nominee, are there any?
Yeah, it does. Are there any other nominations? Or
Yeah.
Anybody else
concerned? Combinations.
I think we're lucky to have the ones we have.
I would agree. Second.
Yeah,
Second.
Yeah, the motion is that the HALRB hereby adopts the recommendations of its nominating committee and elects Katie Myers as its chairperson and Alex Foster as its vice chairperson for 1-year terms beginning January 1st, 2025. And the term begins, we check the bylaws, and the bylaws require that the term start end December 31st and start January 31st. So we didn't arbitrarily choose that date. That's required, but we need to.
How about that yet?
Yeah, we need to put it in resolution. I hear a second.
We do need a second.
I'll say.
Thank you.
Please respond yes if you support the motion. Omari Davis,
Yes.
Robert Duggan,
Yes.
Andrew Fackler,
Yes.
Alex Foster. Do I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, she don't wanna do it.
Yeah, great. I believe in it.
Jerry LaCour,
Yes.
Joan Lawrence,
Yes.
Katie Myers,
Yes.
Andy Winchell,
Yes.
Dick Woodruff.
Yes. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yes.
Not as fun as the bylaws.
At work.
It's better.
All right.
That's more charitable.
Hey. All right, so I'm gonna take over a bit. Energy here. All right, great. So I'm gonna take a little bit of time just to do a little bit of we've been so many administrative things. Let's go ahead and get like a little bit here with the form-based code. So I mentioned at our last meeting that I wanted to kind of go over some of the updates that we're proposing. And so I've just pulled together a couple slides, and so I'll just be talking for a couple minutes. So bear with me if some of this sounds familiar, but I figure the form-based code is still kind of something that not everybody uses all the time or is familiar with. So I'm just going to go into it a little bit. So just on this slide here, I just wanted to kind of mention the Barcroft Apartments. It's a historic garden apartment community located along Columbia Pike corridor between South George Mesa Drive and South 4 Mile Run Drive. Barcroft Apartments is identified in the Columbia Pike Neighborhoods Area Plan, but in the county, we tend to call that the form-based code or the neighborhood form-based code. This was adopted by the county board in 2013. And the thing to know about the form-based code is that it's an alternative zoning district that applies to multifamily residential areas along Columbia Pike that surround its commercial areas. So the form-based code is meant to also be a less intensive or expensive option than our site plan review process. And when projects are utilized by the form-based code, they first are required to receive a use permit from the county board. So Barcroft is one of 3 multifamily residential areas identified as a conservation area in the neighborhood form-based code. In the case of Barcroft, the applicant is required to follow specific standards for conservation areas, and that is identified in Part 7 of the Conservation Area Standards. So the standards also require applicants to meet the HLRB a minimum of 2 times before the project can be considered by the county board. And Part 7 also sets forth a criteria that provides property owners guidance on how to treat their historic buildings. Part 7 is also supposed to be based off of the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties. So a good example to give you, some of you were here when we saw 2801 Columbia Pike, the Elkins building. That was that commercial building, kind of Art Deco in style, that eventually we got to terms where a redevelopment project could be built on top of it with 5 extra stories. In Part 7 of, well, actually, I have to back up. I'm already getting something wrong. So this is the neighborhood form-based code. That's the commercial
right.
form-based code. And so, but it's an example of showing where there can be a bit more expectations of exactly what's supposed to happen with the property. So for that element of the form-based code, that is where we identified that that building should have historic facade preserved. And we have other ones where it's full building preservation. But with the conservation areas, we have the Part 7 standards on how you're supposed to basically be a good steward to those properties.
Can I,
Yeah.
Remind me, is our input advisory?
That's a good point. So when it comes to the form-based code, it is advisory. But then again, that's very similar to a lot of the things that we sometimes have with the site plan review process. Depending on what is the property, what policy language we have, what protections we have. So with conservation area, what we're specifically going to be talking about is this, since this relates to the Barcroft apartments, you all don't issue COAs for the Barcroft apartments. You basically hear it as an informational item. And if we can influence changes or things that are happening to the design, we try and do that either during the DRC meetings or the HLRB meetings. And let's say, fortunately, we haven't had this happen in a while, but if we really were opposed to something, we can't deny it because we're not really reviewing it, but we can put that in the staff report to the county board. You can provide a letter. We can go to the meetings to say where we oppose something, since it's a matter of but also Part 7 is meant to be the guidance. So if we were to say this doesn't follow Part 7's guidelines and here's why, that element it really shouldn't go forward, or the staff shouldn't make a recommendation for the county board to approve it. Did I finish my slide too? All right, it's fine. Why can't I?
Okay, well, I think that's, no, it's okay.
So here, I wanted to kind of mention that since May 2023, the HLRB has provided feedback to 4 different renovation projects at Barcroft, specifically in sections 1, 3, 4, and 7. And there's going to be more coming in 2025. And not only that, they're making amendments to the work that you have already seen because they've received feedback from the Department of Historic Resources because they're going for tax credits. And so I really am glad that we have provided the flexibility to people who are having projects in the form-based code where we can. But the state, they can be a bit more strict, especially when it comes to tax credits. So we will be seeing some amendments later on for those projects. But here I wanted to list some of the scope that the Barcroft team, the Gerald Lynch team, has presented during those times since May 2023 that does follow Part 7. So you'll see that it's a combination of repairing masonry, doing mortar, replacing mechanical systems, patching walls where those mechanical systems used to be, removing non-historic light fixtures, improving any roofs, repair, a lot of paint, replacing damaged attic louvers in kind, installing outdoor amenity spaces. This is all those things that our friend Lauren Riley has been explaining to us. This is the work that we're going to do to run up to do these rehabs. And this all follows the Part 7 standards.
I'll thank you. I'll do that.
So, however, they've also proposed things that don't follow Part 7's updates. That's good. Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay. So the HLRB, though, has been comfortable with these changes and has provided guidance either to make some adjustments during the public meetings. And this approach, we're hoping will continue during future projects that we'll be getting in 2025. So these are some of those things, such as doing more ADA access with installing ramps and railings, having to create openings in the brick elevations because of all the new exhaust systems that are going in, because they're putting laundry units in each of the units. They've had to create window openings to make the units more accessible. And then we've had those two other things that have been a little touchy, which is the idea of installing canopies above entrances, because that's a requirement for Virginia housing standards. So Virginia Housing, they're giving their tax credits for this project, and that is a requirement for these buildings that canopies go on. But we've asked, go to DHR, get a waiver, and they've been able to get those waivers. The problem is, they don't want to have to keep going back and forth to the county board. So what we've been doing is saying, try for that waiver, but if you can't get that waiver, you can go ahead with the designs that we've looked at, because we tried to make them as sensitive as possible to these historic buildings. And then again, with the cladding of existing wood trim, they want that to be cladded with vinyl or aluminum. I'm not happy with that as something as a requirement too, but it's a maintenance thing. And Virginia Housing requires it, but we've also been able to get waivers for that too.
It's interesting they're requiring that, because I would think that the wood could potentially rot behind the vinyl.
True, but you know what? The one things that the Gerald Lynch team has said with that, one of the extra detail is that they would repair the wood, get it into good condition, and then clad. So it's kind of like it's there, hopefully in good condition, until maybe in the future it could be removed. So those last two things, like I said, we can get waivers from DHR for that. We've been getting that lately. But even though we've requested the waivers, we have given guidance that, if you're denied, we're comfortable with those moving forward, because they're being good stewards and trying to meet Part 7 as much as possible.
Lauren,
Yes.
sorry to sound a little dense, but can you explain what Part 7 is again?
Yes, I can. So Part 7 is meant to give its guidelines, and if you go through it, it's really fun to read. It gives you things like, okay, if you're a conservation area, your windows, this is how you should treat your windows. This is, we want you to try and restore or replace in kind. It should be the same material as what is there now. It also goes into doors. It goes into how to deal with elevation materials, how to maintain your roofing and the materials on that. It doesn't say things like you can expand the size of a window to create a door to make an ADA accessible unit. It doesn't have things like that. So it gives guidance for each of those kind of elements, and that's meant to be the guidance that you use when you're creating your project. And we basically see it, hopefully, and it's kind of the fact of, all right, you're meeting everything that's in the form-based code. We're not doing any deviation from Part 7.
Is it Part 7 of the form-based code? Is that what it is?
Yes. So if you go into the neighborhoods form-based code, you'll go to Part 7, which is, I guess, Chapter 7, and that's where you'll get all of that guidance.
Just to put it in context, as I having spent a lot of time working on this, seems like eons ago, this is the only project that's really come up
In a conservation area,
in
correct?
conservation area.
Yes.
So this is the first.
It's been around for a while, but it's the first time that we're actually applying it, correct?
So that was my understanding of it.
Yes.
The Haven Parks, were they added to conservation?
They were. So it used to only be two conservation area, Fillmore Gardens and the Barcroft. And then when we had the Haven Apartments added about 2 years ago, that is now in Part 7 as a conservation area. However, I'm still waiting for that easement to come because that involves TDRs, that involves a site plan that's over in Alston, and that hasn't happened yet, so.
So I don't understand the last two sentences. So if the waiver is rejected by DHR,
Like if they don't request a waiver to Virginia Housing, then the applicant is allowed to do the cladding of wood trim, and they're allowed to put the canopies in.
so they don't need to get a waiver to do it from DHR?
We asked them to get a waiver from DHR.
We asked them.
Yeah.
Yes.
And if they don't, get-
They don't get the
If they
waiver,
don't
then
get
they
the
can
waiver.
do those two improvements.
what's the point of even trying to get a waiver then if they can do it anyway?
Because it's better,
Oh, I'm sorry.
better for the historic integrity of the buildings.
But they can't proceed with any of those changes unless they applied for the waiver and been rejected. Is that right? Or I think what you're
Yeah,
saying.
they do have
Yes,
to,
sorry.
they have to request it, right?
They have to.
Have to request.
Yes, yes.
They have to request the waiver.
If the
Yes.
state
So we
agency
request
doesn't
that.
allow it,
Yes.
Then they're
then
allowed
they
to
can,
do it
then they
anyway.
can do it.
Yes.
No, but, and then don't
Really
really
make
have
sense.
advisory,
Well, we can say,
Then
you
what-
have
what it is that
Do it
they're gonna
any
be doing.
canopies.
That's what I'm saying is when we've been looking at those other sections, they have wanted us to say, if we don't get that waiver, can't get it, would you be comfortable with these two elements? Because we need to get the county board to say that they're comfortable with it. If they don't get that waiver, if they do get the waiver, then they won't do it. We do have to request it.
Okay. they
It's a
do
backup,
get the waiver,
sorry.
they don't do it. They don't do the work.
They don't do the
Correct.
So basically, because it's Virginia Housing's requirement, DHR can say, this is a historic building. Those two things that you're asking them to do for the Virginia Housing credits, that is not okay to do to a historic building. We want you to not do it. We're giving you a waiver.
In an ideal world, they wouldn't do it at all.
Well, in an ideal world, it would be if it's.
Does that mean they get their tax credit? And
They
do
still
it?
get their tax credit. They get the waiver and they get the Virginia Virginia Housing credits. They get those, yes.
But do they still have to deal with,
DHR?
no, not DHR, they have to deal with us, at least at an advisory level still. Do they also have to deal with the state historic preservation?
Yeah,
people?
so, well, after they get that waiver, like if they were going for rehabilitation tax credits, then they wouldn't have to do anything else, but they are
Historic
also going
preservation
for
tax
that.
credit, so they
Yes.
also need to get Richmond's approval.
Yes, yes, and
So
that's
there's a
why
number of different
there's a,
people weighing in here.
Yeah,
correct,
it's not just us.
yes.
Yeah.
For your patience while I also trying to give you what is the steps for things I haven't had conversations with. I've just been here. We got the waiver. That's all I've been. Great. So with this slide, I wanted to kind of talk about what are our proposed changes we'd like to make to Part 7. So the county staff were working towards making the updates to the neighborhood form-based code based on the recommendations from the master financing development plan for Barcroft. So Joan and Dick were involved, gosh, what was that, January to
Been off and on since all year.
So- early in 2024, you all were part of the OG committee, which basically reviewed this master financing development plan where we kind of provided the vision of what Barcroft is going to become. In that document, there were many recommendations, and now staff is taking those recommendations and doing kind of this administrative lift to get the form-based code kind of updated to match what the community said they're comfortable with moving forward with Barcroft. One of those elements is the fact that the county staff, we want to propose text changes to Part 7 that involves the conservation area standards to the neighborhood form-based code. And these text updates are meant to align, align for future Barcroft scopes to Part 7, but basically the things that we've been seeing since 2023, we've been comfortable with, and I want that to be reflected now in Part 7. The HLRB will continue to see projects 2 times before it goes to the county board. So sometimes things match Part 7, but they need to be tweaked a little bit. you still have that opportunity to do that during those 2 times of review. So the proposed text updates will allow for those items that I have up on the screen, which are things like the ADA updates to ramps and railings, the new entrances to secondary elevations, expanding window wells for emergency access, expanding basement level windows for emergency access, new window types that have the appearance of the existing for emergency access only, as well as changes to window materials for historical accuracy, and then vent openings on primary elevations that are minimal in size. So typically those vent openings have been no larger than the size of a brick. But sometimes it has been impossible for them to make those vent openings on the side elevations or at the rear, just because units, that's just how it's been too challenging for them to do it other than at the front. And hopefully I didn't make it confusing with the bullets at the bottom, but if there's no waiver granted, allow for the entry canopies that are sensitive to the overall design. And then again, if there's no waiver granted, allow for cladding of wood trim. So what I mean by that is the text updates in part 7 typically says this type of stuff. And I will clarify that those text edits are happening now. County leadership is going through those. They're going to be continuing to do that into January. I want to just kind of go into the timeline so that you can see what those are. But before I do that, the next slide, let's see. So what I did do, I didn't want to pull up the whole document because there's lots of comments that are going on that my colleagues are putting into it. But these are the sections so far where I've been making changes to the text in part 7 to be updated to what we've been comfortable with for the past year and a half. Now, I would not like to go through all of this text and go back and forth on words, but we could do that. Also, you all would have time to see what is submitted to the Planning Commission in January and the County Board in January to make any suggestions or provide feedback. And as you know, the county loves to say, thank you for your feedback. We will consider it. There might be some things that we take and some things that we don't. But right now, this is what I've got so far. The first one covers the concept of the new cladding on the exterior decorative wood elements, that it's permissible in instances where waivers are not granted by Virginia Housing. So again, very, very specific, so that someone can't just say, I want to put cladding over my wood trim. And if it's not related to a requirement to get tax credits in some way, they can't do it. The next one, talking about new openings on primary primary entrance elevations, concerning air conditioning units and whatnot. Again, waivers by Virginia Housing. So it's supposed to be, it's very specific really what's going on to Barcroft Apartments, but I think that all of this does apply if we were to get updates to Fillmore Gardens or to Haven Apartments.
That was going to be one of my questions, because it just seems like the document is general with respect to all of the conservation areas. And yeah, what we're doing is really specific for Barcroft. But I could see how it might apply to the others as well.
It could.
So
It could, and there's always there's always a chance that we could come back and then make an amendment to this language again to the county board if it seems like it's problematic for projects in the future with other properties.
What's the impetus for doing this?
So again, because of that master financing development plan for Barcroft, all of those meetings were kind of saying things like a lot of it is because the county has put so much money into trying to update the property with Jarrah Lynch. We're trying to find ways to balance that cost by going to get tax credit. So a lot of these things are updates that need to happen to make the buildings up to code, meet the standards for providing affordable housing covenants. And so Virginia Housing with these updates, as well as even just things like the condition of the materials, that needs to be at a certain standard. And so that is part of the reason why we're wanting to do this, so that's what the form-based code is supposed to be. It's supposed to be very specific, and we're not supposed to kind of deviate too much. But this is one of the ways that we can make updates.
Just to clarify, it's there, this bar cross is going for both rehabilitation credits
Yes.
from BD, the Department of Historic Preservation, and also for the housing credits.
Yes. Yeah. So we're all trying to basically.
So it's not just, so frequently, I guess, we're confronted with tax credits.
Yeah.
But this is more than that.
It is. And there's any chance that the county can continue to try and work with Gerald Lynch to try and find ways to fix that finance. Like, I don't know how we keep saying, basically, we don't want to be spending all of this money. We want to try and get any funding that we can to it. And so if there's another way to do it, we will do that. So I'm hoping that we'll eventually start looking for FEMA money to do improvements to some of the utility system, the drainage and whatnot that is involved in Barcroft. But this is, yes, two efforts, housing and historic preservation credits.
That's what I was thinking.
So on that, yay, the arrow button worked. So I just want to let you know again, I'm working to continue to fine tune the text. But as you know, that I'm not, if it's just my words alone and that just gets to the county board, that would be great. But that's not the case. Other people are reviewing that language too. But you do have the opportunity to look at that. So I can continue to work with Joan and Dick. Would like to have an opportunity to look through some of that and make any suggestions. We can kind of go towards that. But the timing is that that'll be happening in January when they're doing the request to advertise, and then it will eventually go to the county board in February.
So what's the end result of all that then? What's the purpose?
Well, I guess the purpose is so that now you've got, so if we start to think of it, if I'm the Gerald Lynch team and we do these text edits and these updates are there, the next time you see them, when they provide the scope, they will say all of this meets part 7. And therefore you guys can ask any questions that you have that maybe you want to understand a little bit more. Maybe DRC sees something that they kind of have questions about. And it just helps streamline the process. And that's what the form-based code is supposed to
I
be.
think it's sort of equivalent to design guidelines for historic districts, but it's done in a different way because it's this form-based code document. Not always, the commercial form-based code, I guess, was not the best document, but there's been some interesting architecture as a result. Anyway, and this is because these are 3 very specific areas in Barcroft that are historic.
3.
I mean, not Barcroft, Columbia Pike.
Right.
So,
Whole Barcroft is historic.
so I wanted to kind of give you that overview. I'm happy to continue working with you all on what these edits are. And if there's other questions about the form-based code and other things, like Lauren, you mentioned something about the commercial form-based code. I want to understand that more. I'm happy to go into it.
One thing I noted, if you go back a couple slides, most of them are pretty objective. Until you get down to vents, I think you talk about minimal in size. Well, who makes that determination?
Well,
What's minimal? That's to me not as objective as the others are. Or somebody else is making the, whether it's required by the ADA or not is something, but we don't have any, we don't have the expertise. We just rely on other people, but stuff like
Well, I think you say they minimally impact.
historical
the-
accuracy, who makes that?
They basically minimally impact the appearance of the
But who makes
front
that? My
facade.
question is, that's not really objective, it's subjective.
Well, we have an opportunity to look,
you all,
we have an opportunity to look at it.
To look at it,
We
right.
can say, no, that's not minimal.
But my
It's
impression
open to
is that
interpretation.
they're gonna bring it to us and they're gonna say it all, they're not gonna point out the stuff that's that somebody has exercised some discretion as to what's minimal
Right.
and what's historically accurate.
Here, to make it concrete, let's say they came to, with us a proposal to do, through wall, those air conditioning units where.
Right.
And they said, well, we picked the smallest unit we could find. It's still big, but we picked the smallest one we could find. You could interpret that they minimized this opening. And we would say, but that's completely inappropriate. You shouldn't even be coming through the wall there.
They're not even gonna point this stuff out. Right,
Well, I
because
think
they're
it'll be
just gonna
pretty
say,
obvious.
Somebody has made this subjective determination. Yeah, the objective stuff, I didn't really care about, but the subjective stuff, I think,
Are you suggesting we should put a dimension, no more than?
well, I don't know. I was thinking about that, but I don't want to do that because I think that's too
I like where
nitty
Joan,
gritty.
I like where Joan was going about like minimal change. I think minimal impact to the appearance, historic appearance. It could be something like that, and I can work on that language, but I don't want to go into a dimension because I think that that's going to be too limiting.
But
Yeah,
it may
like
not apply to every
sensitive to overall design is the third one that I saw. Who makes that determination? You don't really want the sponsor to be making, well, we think it's sensitive.
Sure.
That should be our determination. Historical accuracy should be ours. And to me, something like minimal should be our determination because it's not objective. But if you can come up with some objective language, I can be
Yeah.
fine with it. But all those are subjective questions. And once you get at the subjective questions where we have some expertise, I think the HALRB should.
There are other subjective things like, for instance, design of canopies at the doors. I mean, we're gonna have to say, we don't think that's appropriate, or we do think it's appropriate. So there are other subjective things, within these guidelines.
Those aren't listed there. Okay. But I agree with you on that point.
But they're really going to be reviewed by DRC still
That's true.
before they come to the board. So a lot of those.
So we can,
make some
we
sort
can
of
tell them,
recommendation.
we see this huge air conditioner and we don't think that's minimal.
Yeah, but I get the issue is what if they say, yeah, we disagree.
Yes.
We're going to go forward with this. We think it meets the guidelines, and then, because we're only advisory, that we can't.
That's correct.
And then it ends up in the board deciding whether it's appropriate or not.
Well, I think what I can do is I understand where you're coming through on that, and I can continue to work on that language, and I can definitely show it to Joan and Dick, or Jerry, if you'd like to see it, how I kind of tweak it. But it is the matter of, I review it, so I will determine if it's appropriate or not. DRC will, HLRB will, then you'll have 2 more times after that, because we can tell them to keep coming to the DRC during that second round. So, and if they aren't meeting what we think is appropriate or not, then we can state that when it's presented to the county board in the staff report. But if it ever gets to that point, before it even gets there, staff will want to work with the applicant to say, we're going to say in the report that we don't support this, or you're going to see that the HLRB doesn't support this. Do you want that, or do you want the county board to say, this looks great, it's on the consent agenda? So that's going to be something that the applicant's going to have to determine how much they're going to fight. But staff can continue to take the feedback of the HLRB and I can work with my colleagues to try and figure that out. But I don't want it to be so specific that unless you do want it to be very specific, and then we strike that. And those are elements that will come back and just won't meet part 7. And we have to kind of do this dance to figure out, can that particular element in their scope work with what we're comfortable with and what it doesn't. You can't stop it.
I mean, I think that's a reasonable proposal for some of these. Like when we're talking about primary elevations and new openings on primary elevation. Does primary mean the front?
Yeah.
I think it's reasonable to not give some blanket authority. I think I agree with you that trying to create a dimension, an allowable dimension for an opening is not the way to go, but I think we ought to be able to preserve, not create the expectation that they can come to us with some opening in a primary elevation that we all know is going to be wrong for the buildings. So it may be that, I think by and large, this is all fine, but with that particular example, that's.
Well, that's a good example. And in the text that we have right now, that if you look at the second box, new openings to building walls on primary entrance elevations, including for windows or air conditioning units, other through wall equipment, except as permitted in blah, 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 or in instances where waivers are not granted by Virginia Housing, but where such openings would be camouflaged.
We'll do that.
So doesn't that mean you
What-
said that they're allowable?
Yeah,
New
is it
openings-
like these things are allowed and then
Plant a
it's.
shrub in front of it.
No, it's more camouflage, meaning like, for example, some of the vents that the Gerald Lynch team has been saying is going to be painted to match the terracotta of the brick. So you'll still have the vent in the shape of the brick, of like one of the brick bases, but it will match that color.
Could you use language, and this may not be the exact words, but visually inconspicuous or something like that?
I like that.
That's a good phrase.
Incognito. But I understand where you're coming through on that, so I'll continue to work on that language, and I can share that with, especially I want to make sure that I'm catching these scenarios and not, like you said, doing a blanket kind of, it will just automatically be part 7.
With number,
So
with number 5 now, I mean, it allows the, I guess, with our review, or is it, like currently, I mean, like with number 5, is the portion in the red is,
The red is the new text.
so new open building wall, being for one of that's permitted, and I guess. So under some sort of condition it is currently.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. It's allowable on side elevations where elevations is not.
Oh, okay, I see.
Thank you for your input so far.
Thank you. Thank you for all the work you've done on it.
Yeah.
So, Dick and Joan, you've also been very patient with me during this month while I've been trying to figure out how to get through this too.
Well, I think you've been patient with us.
But I'll keep working on it and I'll loop you all in with what I'm thinking. So that, Jerry, I'm happy to do that too with you. Pointing out some good
Fine.
elements.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to, having been involved in the initial iteration of this, it's not easy. And this is the first time we've really had to use it
It is,
as well.
it is.
It has been.
So before we go to our special guests, I do want to mention one other thing in the staff report. And you all noticed, hopefully, that Michael ended up sending an email out to you all mentioning updates to the local historic district designation application form. So we made some updates to it, and we did these updates because we wanted to make sure that we have enough information for the HLRB to consider when you're making the determination if a property should be studied or if it should not be studied. We were talking about this with Katie and with Omari during our overview, and Katie made a very good suggestion that we provide you a bit more of an overview of what those changes are and the reasoning, as well as the research that we did to kind of compare where Arlington is in comparison to other counties. So we would like to do that in February with you all. It'll just take, a couple minutes for us to kind of go through. But feel free to click on that form and see some of the new updates to it. And if you're kind of like, oh, I've never looked at it in a lot of detail, you'll learn what we did in February.
I actually thought, I looked at what you sent out and I really thought it was a good idea because, we've had a couple applications recently that have been kind of minimal and the proponent should have, to me, more of a burden to, present their ideas, and it shouldn't be up to the HLRB or the staff to do the basic work. I mean, the proponents, to me, should. I'm glad that we're putting it in a form style, so you're not really changing the burden of proof, but you are making it much more helpful to the HLRB and the staff. And because a lot of times they have this information already, you have to sort of get it. I mean, you've done it, okay, so you know how it works, but I think it's a really helpful development.
Thank you. But we've also heard a little bit of feedback that there are some questions on why we ended up making some of the changes, and do we feel that that might be too many hoops? So we'd like to provide both perspectives so that you can kind of see why we came up with where we were, where we ended up. And also help us all get familiar with the LHD process, since we tend to get that once or twice a year for different reasons. So be a nice moment. Any questions? Not, the staff report is done. I'm gonna hand it over to our sparkly guest over here.
Did I miss the election?
You did.
Oh, congratulations, are in
Yeah,
order.
right.
Yeah. Excellent. Hi, everybody. It's been a while.
I know.
I've been keeping up to date through the team as to what everyone's been up to, and they've been doing a great job of keeping everything afloat.
More importantly, what have you
What
been
have
up
you been
to?
doing?
Well, I've been in the manager's office since July. I've been doing a lot of interdepartmental collaboration, meeting a lot of new people, which has been very exciting. And I'm actually staying on in the county manager's office. So I wanted to come and share that news with all of you and let you know that it's been, you know, a wonderful time working with all of you over the past 2 decades. And even though I miss seeing you every Wednesday, know that I'm still cheering on all the important work that the HP team and that the HLRB is trying to do, and know that you have an ally. And I look forward to hearing all the wonderful things that the team is able to accomplish in this next round.
So we have an ally in the manager's office.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes.
And thank you for all of your leadership and the dedication that you're providing for the program.
I left so much behind because I wasn't sure if I was coming back or not after the acting assignment was over. And I found things, you'll be proud of me. I think I threw away and recycled more than I kept for you all to go through. So I still have more to sort, but I made a small dent.
Thank you. Thank you.
That, anything else for good of order?
Actually, sorry, I forgot. It's a housekeeping item. All right, moving forward next year, we're gonna have our meetings at 311. So in the room that we were in last month, because it's bigger, I was able to reserve it. So I'll do reminders, don't worry, but if you come here and we're not here, because we're upstairs. Yeah.
Anything else for good of order?
I just want to say thank you for your leadership.
Yes, yes,
You've done a great job. Really,
absolutely. I echo that.
for your service.
Appreciate it.
You're staying on the board.
I am.
Having both been there before.
And yours.
And you too, Vice Chair.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Yes.
The bill fund begins now.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think-
You get to hang with all the cool people now.
Well, I've been hanging with them
Yeah.
already. I know.
Christine has lots of good
Yeah.
name, yes.
You've got an idea of what happens behind.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good introduction, Alex. So, with Alex, yes, yeah.
Ever been going to the,
Yeah,
oh, good.
yeah.
Yes, yes. And then, so, take over. That, I'll deal with that one last time.
Right.
Hey.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Hopefully there won't be any Wilson Spoon type